So, what do you do when you find yourself inside a poem that you realize that you're beginning to like, that is appealing to you? Make it your own. Make it your own. And that's exactly what I want to try to demonstrate today with Heartwork podcast. This is Dale Byron. And as those have been following the podcast, at least for the last number of sessions, we've been talking about how to make a poem more powerful for yourself personally and also for others if you are sharing it with them. And just by way of review, we talked a little bit about the first thing was to speak poems alive. Our voice actually gives the poem its life. The second was the power of silence, pause for power. The pauses, the silences are very, very important in a poem. The third was honor the heart lines. And when we talk about that, every poem has one or two very special, often one special line in the poem, which you must fully inhabit in order to have the poem be its most powerful for yourself or for others. Savor the surprise is the one that's the sort of the idea that we talked about last week, which was the surprise in a poem, that moment where we're just, it's often delightful, it's often insightful, it often gives us new feelings and new perspectives on a subject. So savor the surprise was very important. Now, finally, the last one, which is this week, is make the poem your own. And that's really, it's pretty simple, but it's the idea of stepping inside a poem and making, in terms of the meaning and all of that, to literally personalize it for yourself. You could actually say that no poem is complete at the writing. It's only complete when it's received by the listener or the reader. And I often like to say that a poem doesn't mean anything in particular. What it means is how it feels inside our body as we read it, and particularly a poem that appeals to us, that catches our attention. I have a poem today that I want to use as an example of what it means to step inside a poem, and we'll talk about that after I speak it. The poem is called Psalm, and it's by one of my favorite poets. It's a Polish poet, Wisława Szymborska. She wrote in her original language, which was Polish, and this translation of the poem is done by Baranzak and Claire Kavanaugh. So let's do the poem, Psalm. And by the way, the poem is about the idea of national boundaries, and it uses some humor and some different things. We'll talk about that, but just to give you a quick little heads up. The poem goes like this. Oh, the leaky boundaries of man-made states. How many clouds float past them with impunity? How much desert sand shifts from one land to another? How many mountain pebbles tumble onto foreign soil in provocative hops? Need I mention every single bird that flies in the face of frontiers or alights on the roadblock at the border? A humble robin still, its tail resides abroad while its beak stays home. If that weren't enough, it won't stop bobbing. Among innumerable insects, I'll single out only the ant between the border guard's left and right boots, blithely ignoring the questions, where from and where to? Oh, to register in detail, at a glance, the chaos prevailing on every continent. Isn't that a privet on the far bank, smuggling its 100,000th leaf across the river? And who but the octopus with impudent long arms would disrupt the sacred bounds of territorial waters? And how can we talk of order overall when the very placement of the stars leaves us doubting just what shines for whom? Not to speak of the fog's reprehensible drifting and dust blowing all over the steps, as if they hadn't been partitioned. And the voices coasting on obliging airwaves, that conspiratorial squeaking, those indecipherable mutters. Only what is human can truly be foreign. Only what is human can truly be foreign. The rest is mixed vegetation, subversive moles, and wind, and wind. Now, when I step inside this poem, I have a very contemporary feeling. I've read this poem many times, but at this particular time, because there's so much conversation about the notion of ecological challenges, of climate change, and there's so much conversation about immigration. And so this poem talks about how abstract these territorial lines between countries actually happens to be, and how the great powers on Earth, meaning the great natural powers, storms, earthquakes, all of that, even the wind, the clouds, the fog, does not respect these abstract lines that we have drawn as humans between countries. Now, do I mean that those lines have no purpose? Of course they do. But what we have to come to grips with is that, particularly for these larger challenges we face as human beings, particularly for that, we have to understand and come to grips with the fact that these abstractions mean nothing when it comes to storms, when it comes to droughts, when it comes to earthquakes. And actually, what we're seeing more and more is that even individual human beings immigrating, when they're feeling incredibly just in a panic, when they are under such stress in their lives that the only move is to try to move to another place where they would be safer, where they would be able to have enough food and shelter and those types of things. So this poem, to me, when I step inside and make my own meaning, it has so many very up-to-date kinds of wisdom for me in particular. So there you go. Step inside the poem and have your own experience. And I would suggest Psalm by Wisława Szymborska has some very important wisdom for us moderns, particularly right now when it comes to the abstractions of national borders. Okay. Thank you so much for your listening ear. And as I always say, until next time and next poem, take good care of yourself. And if you can, take good care of someone else.